Jade Monroe walked into the pristine glass tower with her head high and her heels clicking against the marble floors. As the CEO of Monroe Tech Solutions, a company that had just pioneered a groundbreaking renewable energy grid, she was minutes away from closing an $800 million deal with the Wexley Group, one of the oldest and wealthiest family-run investment firms in the country. She had spent 6 months negotiating this partnership, flying back and forth, adjusting technical proposals, and jumping through hoops designed by the Wexley's legal team. But today was supposed to be the final signing, a moment of triumph. A film crew had been invited by the Wexleys themselves, under the guise of documenting a historic collaboration. Cameras were rolling as Jade was ushered into the penthouse conference room, where 4 members of the Wexley family waited. The atmosphere felt different. Cold. "Ms. Monroe," said Gregory Wexley III, with a tight smile. "We were just discussing your, shall we say, bold presentation style." A couple of chuckles followed from his cousins, both lounging with arms crossed. Jade smiled politely but said nothing. Gregory continued. "We've never done business with a company quite like yours before. Very unorthodox. Some might say, refreshing. Others might say, risky." Jade's eyes narrowed slightly, but her smile stayed. "What exactly are you trying to say, Mr. Wexley?" Before he could respond, one of his cousins added mockingly, "We were just wondering if your little operation could really handle the weight of a deal this big. $800 million is a lot for a first-time player, wouldn't you say?" There were smirks. One camera zoomed in. Jade slowly stood, adjusted her blazer, and looked straight into the lens. "Are the cameras still rolling?" she asked. The crew nodded. She turned to the Wexleys and said with perfect calm, "Excellent. Then let me make something very clear." Jade didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Standing tall in front of the stunned Wexley family and the cameras now frozen in silence, she continued, "If this was an actual concern about my company's ability to deliver, I'd address it with facts. But this isn't about data. This is about ego. You invited cameras here to gloat. To posture. To belittle me while smiling for the press." Gregory Wexley blinked, caught off guard. "Ms. Monroe," she raised a hand, silencing him instantly. "You don't get to insult the very company you're trying to partner with. I came here expecting respect, transparency, and professionalism. What I got was arrogance, condescension, and a stage performance." The cousin who had made the little operation remark tried to chuckle it off. "Come on, it was just a bit of banter. Relax." Jade turned toward the camera again. "Let this be known, Monroe Tech does not do business with people who confuse disrespect for power." Then she reached into her sleek leather briefcase and pulled out a single document, the final signed agreement. She held it up, smiled for the camera, and tore it clean in half. Gasps filled the room. "No deal," she said, locking eyes with Gregory. "Not today. Not ever." The Wexleys shot to their feet. Gregory stepped forward, his voice laced with panic. "You can't walk away from this. We've already made press announcements, we've invested in, I can and I just did." "You underestimated me," Jade replied, stepping back. "You thought I needed you." She turned and walked out as the cameras captured every step. The moment Jade Monroe stepped out of the Wexley Tower, her phone began to buzz, texts from board members, reporters, and rival executives. Inside the penthouse, chaos erupted. Gregory Wexley slammed his hand on the conference table. "Get her back on the line," he barked. "This deal is already in motion, the stock market's expecting it, and so are our shareholders." But it was too late. Outside, cameras were already broadcasting clips of Jade tearing the deal in half. Within 15 minutes, a short video titled, "CEO Walks Out of $800 Million Deal with Wexley Family," on camera, began trending on every major platform. The views were climbing by the second. Public sentiment quickly turned. Comments flooded in, "Finally, someone stands up to those corporate dinosaurs. She handled that like a queen. Total class. That's how you deal with arrogance, cancel the check. Meanwhile, in a downtown boardroom across the city, a different billionaire investor, Victor Lang from ArcLight Capital, leaned back in his chair, watching the viral clip with amusement. She just became the most powerful CEO in the country, he muttered. His assistant nodded. Shall I schedule a call with her? Victor smirked. No. Send the jet. By the time Jade returned to her office, a small crowd had formed outside Monroe Tech's headquarters, journalists, influencers, and even supporters holding handmade signs that read things like, "Dignity over dollars," and "Leadership looks like this." Her COO, Rachel, was already waiting in her office, holding two phones, both ringing non-stop. "You're trending in 12 countries, Rachel said, half breathless. We've had 5 acquisition offers, 3 partnerships, and, wait, one coffee chain just offered you free lattes for life." Jade raised an eyebrow. Not bad for tearing up paper. But it wasn't just buzz. Real offers were coming in. The Wexleys had underestimated her reach, but the world hadn't. Her bold decision had triggered a flood of interest from progressive firms, international clean energy funds, and even celebrity-backed investors. Then came the knock. Victor Lang himself stepped into the room. No entourage. Just presence. "I just came from the airport," he said, holding up a tablet. "This is a revised contract. Same amount, $800 million, but with better terms, and no condescension attached." Rachel's mouth dropped open. Jade didn't blink. Why? "Because anyone who has the strength to walk away from that circus upstairs," Victor said, "is exactly the kind of person I want to bet on." He extended the tablet. "No press. No cameras. Just business, on your terms." Jade glanced at Rachel, then back at Victor. She smiled. Jade took the tablet from Victor Lang and reviewed the contract carefully. She didn't rush. She didn't need to. Victor stood quietly, hands in his pockets, giving her space, a refreshing contrast to the Wexleys' arrogant performance. After a few minutes, she placed the tablet on the table. "It's solid," she said. "Clean terms. Clear respect. But I'm not signing today." Victor raised an eyebrow. "Fair enough. May I ask why?" Jade leaned forward. "Because I don't operate from reaction. I operate from strategy. I didn't walk away from the Wexleys for drama, I walked away because they mistook my patience for weakness. I want to make sure no one else ever makes that mistake again." Victor gave a slow nod. "I respect that. So what happens next?" "I'll sign," she said, "but I want to make it public, not for ego, but to set the standard. CEOs like me, we don't just accept a seat at the table. We redesign the entire boardroom." Victor grinned. "You know, I think you just wrote your own headline." That evening, Monroe Tech held a live press event in their sleek downtown atrium. Jade stood alone at the podium, cameras flashing, as she signed the new $800 million deal with ArcLight Capital, on her own terms, under her own roof, with the world watching. The next morning, news outlets everywhere ran variations of the same headline: "She said no to old money. Now the future bows to her." And as for the Wexley family, their stock dropped 17% overnight. Internal board members began calling for Gregory's resignation. Jade Monroe didn't just walk away. She changed the game. The day after the historic signing with ArcLight Capital, Jade Monroe sat in a private conference room flanked by her executive team. But this meeting wasn't about celebration, it was about legacy. "Now that we've secured the capital," she began, "it's time to build something they can't ignore, undermine, or buy out." She laid out a new initiative, the Monroe Accelerator, a $100 million fund carved from the deal itself, aimed at launching and supporting innovators who, like her, had been dismissed, underestimated, or mocked by the old guard. Her team looked stunned. "You're investing part of the investment?" her CFO asked cautiously. Jade smiled. "I didn't walk away from that deal just for me. I walked away for every founder who's ever been told they weren't ready, when they were the future." News of the accelerator exploded across the business world. Suddenly, Jade wasn't just a CEO. She was a movement. Young entrepreneurs flooded Monroe Tech's inbox. Media outlets published op-eds praising her vision. Even late-night shows replayed the clip of her tearing the Wexley contract, calling it the most iconic power move of the decade. Meanwhile, the Wexleys scrambled to do damage control. Their own board had leaked an internal memo accusing them of outdated practices and toxic legacy dynamics. But none of it mattered anymore. Jade had done what few ever dared. She didn't just reject the deal, she rewrote the rules. While Jade Monroe's name lit up headlines around the globe, the Wexley family was in complete disarray. Inside their towering headquarters, Gregory Wexley stared at a stack of reports on his desk. Monroe Tech's valuation had doubled in 48 hours. ArcLight Capital's stock surged following the deal. And worst of all, multiple major partners had started withdrawing from Wexley Ventures, citing concerns about outdated leadership behavior. Gregory's cousin, the same one who made the "little operation" comment, paced nervously across the room. "We never should have gone on camera. We made it personal." "It was personal," Gregory snapped. "She humiliated us in front of the world. We're Wexleys, people don't say no to us." "People didn't," the cousin corrected. "Until now." At that very moment, an emergency board meeting was called. Half the room voted to temporarily strip Gregory of decision-making power while they launched an internal review. The empire was crumbling, not from sabotage, but from pride. Meanwhile, back at Monroe Tech, Jade received a message from an unlikely source, Gregory's own daughter, Emily Wexley. "What you did wasn't just brave. It was necessary. My father never thought anyone would stand up to him. Thank you." Jade put the message down and smiled. She hadn't set out to destroy the Wexleys. She just refused to be disrespected. The ripple effects. That was on them. With the dust settling and the headlines still burning hot, Jade Monroe was already on to the next phase. She stood in front of a crowd of over 2,000 at the International Innovation Summit in San Francisco, the biggest tech stage of the year. The crowd had come to see keynote speakers from across the globe. But it was clear, Jade was the main event. Her opening line silenced the room. "I was supposed to be here as the co-founder of a promising startup backed by old money. Instead, I'm here as the CEO of a global force built on integrity, vision, and the ability to say no, loudly." Thunderous applause. She didn't just speak about technology, she spoke about culture, leadership, and courage. She shared how she built Monroe Tech without compromising who she was. How she walked away from one of the most prestigious families in business because they crossed a line. And then came the moment that defined everything. The future doesn't belong to the people who built glass towers to look down on the rest of us. It belongs to those of us who learned how to build without them, and who were brave enough to walk away. A standing ovation followed, complete with tech leaders, investors, and university students chanting her name. Across the venue, a senior executive from one of the world's top venture firms turned to his colleague and said, "We're looking at the next Elon." But with twice the backbone. Jade hadn't just changed her story. She had become the story that it didn't take long for Jade Monroe's bold stance to ripple across industries and continents. Within a week of her summit speech, 3 more CEOs, 2 in Europe, 1 in Asia, publicly cut ties with legacy firms that had tried to strong-arm them into deals under outdated, patronizing terms. Each one cited Jade Monroe's story as inspiration. Tech blogs started calling it the Monroe Effect. Meanwhile, Monroe Tech's offices became a pilgrimage site for aspiring founders and journalists alike. Inside, the company was expanding rapidly, hiring talent that had been overlooked by other firms, investing in underrepresented inventors, and launching a series of sustainability initiatives far ahead of industry standards. Victor Lang, now a close advisor, smiled during a private investor meeting. She's not just building a company, she's building an ecosystem. But not everyone was happy. Back at the Wexley estate, Gregory received a notification that his name had officially been removed from the board of one of their most profitable ventures. A quiet internal coup had taken place, led by his own brother and approved by the remaining board members. Publicly, the Wexley family issued a brief and carefully worded statement: "We acknowledge the rapidly changing business climate and are committed to evolving with it." But everyone knew, they had been humbled. And Jade? She was just getting started. In an exclusive interview with the Wall Street Herald, she ended with one chilling line that echoed across headlines: "They thought I was here to take their deal. I was here to take their place." Months later, Jade Monroe sat on the cover of every major business magazine in the world. Time, Forbes, Fast Company, The Economist. Each featured a different version of the same headline: the CEO who walked away, and took the future with her. Monroe Tech was no longer a startup. It had become a blueprint. Venture capital firms had begun rewriting their deal structures to match the transparency and respect Jade demanded. Investment committees now referenced her company in meetings as the Monroe model. Harvard Business School dedicated an entire case study to the $800 million walkout, calling it a pivotal moment in modern corporate ethics. But Jade didn't let the noise distract her. She walked the floors of her headquarters, checking in with developers, sitting in on product testing, and having lunch in the employee cafeteria. No executive wing, no bodyguards, no glass walls. She led by presence. Meanwhile, the Wexley family was in freefall. Multiple lawsuits emerged against Gregory for past misconduct swept under the rug. Shareholders revolted. Entire divisions were sold off to stay afloat. Jade never commented publicly on their downfall. She didn't need to. Her silence was its own form of domination. And on the anniversary of the broken deal, Monroe Tech held a private dinner, not for press or investors, but for the employees who had built the empire from the ground up. As the lights dimmed, Jade raised her glass. "No one gave us a seat at the table," she said. "So we built our own. And now, the world eats from it." Standing ovation. A year to the day after she tore up the Wexley contract on camera, Jade Monroe stood at a groundbreaking ceremony for the Monroe Institute for Future Leadership, a nonprofit business academy she personally funded. Its mission: train the next generation of ethical, visionary entrepreneurs from every background, especially the ones too often overlooked. No legacy families. No gatekeeping. No glass ceilings. As the ribbon was cut, journalists asked if she had any words for the Wexley family. Jade smiled softly. "No. That story's over. This one is just beginning." Back at Monroe Tech, the latest round of innovation had pushed their clean energy solutions into global adoption. Entire nations were restructuring their infrastructure around Monroe's technology. Climate summits invited Jade to speak as a thought leader. Her name became synonymous with courage, vision, and power, the kind earned, not inherited. And one quiet evening, as she looked out the top floor window of her headquarters, the city glowing below, her assistant entered. "Victor Lang is online too," she said. "Wants to talk about a new moon base initiative." Jade chuckled. "Tell him I'll call back. I've got bigger things to build right here on Earth first." The camera pulled back as the skyline reflected across the glass, and the words appeared across every screen: she didn't just cancel the deal. She rewrote the future. 6 months later, Monroe Tech hosted the largest private tech summit ever held on U.S. soil, streamed live to 47 countries, attended by world leaders, innovators, and cultural icons. Jade Monroe was the keynote speaker. But this wasn't just another speech. She unveiled Monroe Nexus, a revolutionary AI energy integration platform designed to power entire cities with zero emissions. The demo left the audience speechless. Then came the moment no one expected. A familiar face was spotted sitting in the last row. Gregory Wexley. Disgraced. No longer a chairman. No board seats. No speaking gigs. Just a man watching the empire he once mocked become something far bigger than he ever imagined. Jade saw him. Didn't flinch. Didn't acknowledge him. She didn't need to. Her voice echoed through the arena. Every time someone tells you you're not ready, too bold, too loud, too different, remember this moment. Don't shrink for comfort. Rise for impact. The crowd roared. By the time she exited the stage, the hashtag built like Jade was trending worldwide. Her story had gone from headline, to movement, to legend. She didn't just cancel an $800 million deal. She shattered a dynasty, and built an empire in its place.